welcome. It's great to see you all here while you are on a Saturday morning, very early. So thank you so much for being here. My name is Elsa Vie, and I lead the African Studies Center at K16 Education Program at Boston University. And our program aims to increase the reach of African studies in every classroom through professional development and curriculum. And we do this, I want to mention, alongside other national resource centers at the African Studies Association Outreach Council. This workshop is sponsored by BU African Studies Center and Georgetown University Center for Arab Studies through Title VI funding, as well as Engine Science Africa. And one of our speakers is a representative from Gamma Tech, and another one has led and developed the Zongo Story project. So I want to acknowledge that their presence here today is also a contribution from these institutions. I would like to also at this time introduce my colleague, Susan Douglas, who is here.
Good morning. My name is Susan Douglas. I am the Education Outreach Director, K14 Education Outreach Director at Georgetown Center for Contemporary Arab Studies that collaborates with the Al-Walid bin Talal Center for Contemporary Arab Studies. Also, CCAS is a national resource center on the Middle East and North Africa.
Wonderful. Thank you, Susan. And I'd like to invite my colleague Tiffany to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tiffany Bailey, and I'm a program assistant for the K16 Education Outreach Program at BU's African Studies Center. And I'm a PhD student at BU studying French language and literature and Francophone topics as well.
Wonderful. So Tiffany and I wanted to start off with framing our event today. We have put together a program that tells the story of science as the story of people in places. So let me say that again. Science is the story of the sense-making and the meaning-making of people grounded in places. So science and math are not just abstractions that hover above us all in a neutral, some sort of cloud space, some imagined objectivity. But science and math develop out of the brilliance of people trying to understand and improve their very specific situated contexts. And so today we're going to foreground, we're going to highlight, we're going to celebrate the stories of science, technology, art, and place-based education that center Africa, that center the knowledge and the creative initiatives of people across African contexts. And we're going to ask the question, what stories do we tell about the way we know our world? So unfortunately, the story that we have been told is that science is a method and that it strives for neutrality and that there are theories that are abstracted from reality. And the imagery that we receive from science is largely of white European men. So the story of Africa in science and science in Africa has really largely been untold, especially in schools. So why have these stories been silenced in the curriculum, and why are they so crucial to include? What happens when we don't tell the story centered on Africa? So I'm going to turn it to Tiffany to add to this opening.
Thank you. So we found that this issue goes beyond just a lack of historical accuracy and lack of diversity. Ignoring these stories and contributions of Africa deprives students of important knowledge and leaves behind students of color who do not connect with the material. As STEAM educators, it is best to acknowledge the quote unquote achievement gap often observed between white and Black students. That is not a rule or a natural occurrence. Schooling experience, race and racism, and lived experiences all contribute to a child's ability to learn. Black children are more likely to be underserved in curriculum and underestimated. What if children saw themselves reflected in the materials? Stinson, Jett, and Williams, in their article and study, found that the most successful mathematics teachers of Black children disrupted mathematics as a white institutional space. They noted that this is important because textbook publishers reinforce the idea that mathematicians are older white men and trivialize non-European and ethno-mathematics. And this mindset helps to remind students that mathematics, though seemingly mysterious, is grounded in the material world that we co-inhabit and co-construct. So let me ask you, Does the way we currently teach math bring joy to your students' lives? Are the identities of students reflected in your instruction? And how are you cultivating students' genius?
So today's workshop will be both foundational and practical. So if you look at the agenda, which we will circulate in the chat box in just 1 minute, I know we sent it over email, but in case you didn't get it, if you look at the agenda, let's just put this out here right now. Great. You will see that we have built in 3 presentations that center the historical roots of mathematics with our wonderful guest speaker, Thierry Zomahoun. We are also centering some very innovative science resources from Kenya through the presence of Joy Kiano. And we're also centering literacy and place-based education that draw on students' local knowledges through Emily Williamson Ibrahim. There will be resources both for elementary teachers and high school teachers. And because we are centering the stories we tell about science and math, and the central theme is stories, we have threaded through 7 mini stories that will highlight aspects of storing science, storing math, the lives of students, the learning of students, to some very mini skills and very important histories.
And we encourage you all to react and ask questions in the chat box while a presenter is speaking. And we will then moderate the discussion afterwards, after the end of each story or discussion. There will not be time for Q&A on the mini stories, but we will have time for a longer discussion at the end.
So to get us started on the theme of stories and storing science and the story of science in places, we are going to share our screen and start with the wonderful story of Onesimus, which is read by the 9th grade students of Foxborough Regional High School. They are students of Linda Morse. And Linda, are you here today? Do you want to say a quick hi?
Hi, yeah. I teach this little group of 9th graders civics, and of course, community service would be part of civics. And I've been teaching a course, actually a year-long course on African history, kind of like an every other year at my high school. And so anytime I can, I always bring in African history and information. So the students were excited to be able to present. And first they had to read and summarize, and it was a great skill building practice. And, you know, especially after COVID, it was really important to kind of capture where they are. So anyway, they gathered information and compared information and wrote the essay. And I really very minimally touched it up at all. So it was great. And so I had 3 students who quickly volunteered to read it, which was awesome. So here they are. And
thank you so much, Linda. Thank you. Thank you.
We're from Foxborough Regional Charter School, and my name is Layla.
Hello, my name is Dante.
And I'm Marisa. In 1721, smallpox arrived in Boston through the British ships. It was a rapidly spreading virus that people did not know how to control. The smallpox virus was extremely contagious and was spread by person-to-person contact. Smallpox victims experience symptoms such as fevers, blisters, fatigue, and disfiguring scars, and death. Smallpox destroyed native communities who were incapable of fighting off the disease because they didn't have any immunity. Smallpox also entered the colonies through slave ships and was spread by enslaved people who were kept in unsanitary conditions. On May 6 of 1704, An enslaved man who was later named Onesimus was taken from the windward and rice coast of Africa on the ship, Banks Island, and brought to Boston on a slave ship. He was purchased by a Puritan congregation of a northern Boston church and was gifted to a pastor named Cotton Mather. Onesimus then joined Mather's household in 1706. Unfortunately, the only things that we know are from Mather's diary. However, church records and civic records show that he was real. We know Onesimus had a family and 2 sons. He was a veteran of war and a civilian captive. Throughout his time living in the Mather's household, Mather taught Onesimus how to read and write, mainly for religious reasons and business matters. However, Onesimus did not want to convert to Christianity because it was most likely that he followed a religion called the Akan. Mathers took this personally since Onesimus wasn't Christian. It reflected badly on Mathers. This frustration led Mathers to write a book on how to convert slaves to Christianity.
Onesimus was an African man who was a key factor in the reduction of the impact of smallpox. He brought the idea of vaccination of smallpox to Boston in 1721. We don't know his real name after Onesimus had joined Cotton Mather's household and was renamed to Onesimus, a Greek word from the Bible meaning useful. In his journal, Cotton Mather had described Onesimus as an intelligent fellow, but later said that he was useless and wicked, and had accused him of being a thief. Onesimus went to Cotton Mather and told him that back home in Ghana, his community would do an inoculation process to prevent themselves from getting smallpox. To complete the inoculation process, you use a thorn to pop the smallpox bump on a sick person and apply the germs into an open wound of a healthy person. By this time, about half of Boston was infected with smallpox. Yet, the people of Boston were still against the idea of inoculation called variolation at the time. Not because variolation was a bad idea, but because it was coming from an African man, so they didn't trust it. For that reason, the Bostonians rioted, and some attempted to attack Cotton Mather and threw a bomb through his window. They were enraged. A few colonists thought that it was also against God and their religion. The people of Boston insulted, threatened, and harassed Onesimus for his vaccination and the idea of Cotton Mather supporting it.
To protect himself and the people around him, Mather started to work with a man named Zabdiel Boylston. Zabdiel would then bring the reputation of the smallpox cure up, since they claimed it was made by Boylston and Mather. They also helped spread the word of the cure. In a result, 2.5 of inoculated people died. However, 14.3 who did not receive the inoculation also died. The smallpox epidemic helped give hope for future epidemics. Soon afterward, Edward Jenner found a new way to cure smallpox. Lastly, in 1980, smallpox was gone and wiped off the planet completely. Onesimus, on the other hand, had purchased his freedom and then paid Mather to have a new slave work rate. Unfortunately, due to the fact that Onesimus was an African and black man and a slave at the time, he did not receive any credit for his contributions. Onesimus deserves his credit, and people should know about him because he contributed to the development of vaccines. Onesimus is not the only black person who did not get his credit. There are many more who have contributed greatly to the development of our modern world. I think it's very important that students and teachers educate themselves upon the topic of black people in history. Black people have made a huge impact on our world, and they need to receive credit for their contributions.
Thank you so much to the 9th grade students of Foxborough Regional Charter School and to Linda Morse who led them. These are the stories that need to be told. While we get set up for our next presenter, I want to know how many of you knew about the story about Onesimus. And you can share in the chat box. Please say how many of you, if you knew about it or if this was news to you, and take a moment to introduce yourself. New info. So these are the stories, and this is why we are centering the theme of storytelling in science. First time. Wonderful. First time. So now I have the pleasure, the distinct pleasure of introducing our next guest speaker, who is Thierry Zomahoun. Thierry is a senior executive who has led several international organizations in the fields of education, research, technology, and professional service across 5 continents. He is currently the Chancellor of Gamma Institute of Technology. GIT is Canada's pioneer technology and business school, and it's established to provide disruptive engineering training in advanced technologies. He was the president and CEO of African Institute for Mathematical Sciences from 2011 to 2020. And he developed a global network of university centers of excellence in mathematical sciences. Over 2,500 mathematical science graduates trained at the master's and PhD levels across 10 countries on 3 continents. Thierry has directed innovative educational initiatives from very early childhood to higher education, through basic education and technical and vocational educational training. He's the founder and chairman of 2 prestigious international platforms, the Next Einstein Forum and the Niagara Forum, specialized in science and innovation. And last but not least, he was named one of the top 100 most influential Africans by the New African magazine in 2019. So when I watched Thierry's foundational lecture at the World Conference of Science Journalists, I thought this is the kind of lens that we absolutely need to engage with in education. And so Thierry graciously accepted our invitation and has since been a tremendous collaborator. So it's such an honor to have you, Thierry. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Elsa. Thank you. Good morning to all the participants. I'm going to put up my slide. Yes. Thank you, Elsa, for your presentation. I'm happy to be joining a group of math educators this morning to share a perspective about mathematics education. I think what we're doing this morning is so foundational for humanity, because I see math educators as some of the most important people invested with the task of shaping young souls for the future of humanity and our modern society. So as Elsa said, delighted to share this topic with you. And I just wanted you to remember that this is not a prescription. I want to ignite the discussion, ignite some debate among us. Don't come in with a preconceived idea or trying to beautify or glorify the history of Africa in mathematics, but I just want to put things into the right historical perspective. We can't help but remember that one great man said that education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world, and that great man is Nelson Mandela. So the title of my presentation is Africa as the Cradle of Mathematics, Reimagining a New Mathematics Culture. I think this is extremely important. I just wanna just bear with me. Just wanna scroll through my presentation. Got stuck.
Do you want to try to stop screen share and then share again?
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Now I'm in.
Now it's working. Yeah.
Yeah, it's working now. So you all know that the topic we're talking about today is very important. Galileo Galilei once said that mathematics is the alphabet with which God has written the universe. And I try to look in the scriptures, and I found that there are 150 references to mathematics in the Torah and the Bible. Now, I must say, confess that my knowledge of the Quran is very limited, but I'm pretty sure that you're going to find this equivalent number of references in the Quran as well, and maybe in other Oriental religions. Yes, again, something is not.
Professor, if you use the page down button instead of the mouse, it will probably work better than the mouse.
Exactly. So the three questions that I'm trying to answer here. First is, why has the African origins? Actually, I meant to write origins instead of one, because there are multiple origins of mathematics have been silent for centuries or even millennia. And second question has to do with why is the mathematics so relevant to our very existence and modern economies? This second question is very important for the younger generation. Sometimes when they ask you to know why they should learn or read math, they're looking for concrete answers. Of course, they get very interested when you start talking about the history of math, but they're more interested in the second one. And the third one, which is equally important, which is mainly the focus of my presentation here, is how to improve the mathematics knowledge acquisition in the 21st century and for the generations to come. If you forget everything I'm going to talk about in this presentation, keep in mind 4 words. Number 1, history, impact, culture, and I got a problem for you to help me solve, and then we can carry on with discussions. So, you know, talking about history, some of you may have read a lot about the history of mathematics. We have a bunch of literature on this, even though the dominant body of literature on the history of mathematics is to be found in the Greek civilization. And when one is asked, why have the African origins of mathematics silenced throughout history? Why we don't talk about it? Or when people are forced to talk about it, it's just a couple of paragraphs or maximum a page in a textbook. I would respond by give a number of answers. Number 1 is geopolitical economy. This is the angle I'm taking in a book I'm writing currently, which is the geopolitical economy of mathematical knowledge. Who has interest in not telling the story of Africa as the origin of mathematics? Who is benefiting from the narrative we've been used to for millennia now? The second is the colonial narrative. I don't want to expand on this. And the third, which is one that you all will agree on, is the Hellenistic dominant math doxa, the popular belief that mathematics originated in Greece, and slavery and exploitation as well, segregative educational systems, and a new mathematics culture. I'm going to focus on the last one. We all agree by now, I guess there's a common consensus within the scientific community that Africa is the cradle of humanity. If we all agree on that, it is difficult to not come to terms with the fact that if Africa is the cradle of humanity, I think it's arguably correct to say that the first mathematicians originated in Africa. And people like great minds like Ron Eglash and Claudia Zaslavsky said mathematics, or for that matter, science in general, is the systematic study of nature. And the science has been around us for millennia. And everything we do unknowingly, we're doing math every day. Now, modern scientists claim that modern science, including mathematical sciences, has evolved or developed in isolation from bodies of knowledge from China, from Africa, from the Islamic world, and from the indigenous American populations. I'm not going to further expand on it, but I'm just saying it so that when we get to the Q&A session, we remember that if we ask ourselves if it's possible, if it's at all possible that many civilizations stood idle, intellectually idle, and wait till the 6th century before Christ, BC, before we start talking about math. I'm going to zoom on one aspect, the African perspective. Now, when people talk about the African origin of mathematics, they refer to Egypt. And you all know what they say. It has been a matter of discussion between Cheikh Anta Diop and many Hellenistic dominant proponents that ancient Egyptians are not African. Well, this is subject to debate. This has been proven to some extent that they're Africans. Some people suggest that the Hellenistic approach to math or the Hellenistic region included not only Greeks, but Italy through to Egypt, and some suggest to Ethiopia. Now, we have read and we were taught that 600 BC, at least math, sophisticated, organized mathematics started with Pythagoras. Even though we all know that the first time, as the textbook suggests, that mathematics was introduced as a systematic field of study, it was done through Archimedes and Thales, Anaximander, Euclid. But the popular history and belief is built upon Pythagoras' approach and study of mathematics. By teaching us that Pythagoras first proved the concept of systematic and sophisticated math, we kind of overlook a whole bunch of knowledge bodies from other civilizations. And today, I just want to say what we all know, that 35,000 BC, mathematics were discovered, or human beings came up with mathematics in Africa. I want your popular vote as I'm going through this presentation. Once I finish, I will need your vote for a lady. I think we need to find a name for the first mathematician who comes from Africa. You know, each time we're talking about this, we talk about the Limbo Bones, and then we talk about the Shango Bone, but nobody can tell you who really invented mathematics in Africa. We know that there's no written record about Pythagoras, but there's even no proof that the theorem A squared plus B squared equals C squared is attributed. There's no written record that it's actually Pythagoras who came up with that. In fact, this has been around, this knowledge has been around in Egypt and in Babylon for centuries before Pythagoras was born. So when I finish this, I think we're gonna find a name for the first mathematician. And I want her to be a lady. I will tell you why. So Pythagoras and his followers were referred to, you know, as the people who proved the concept of mathematics, who originated, created math as we're learning it today. But I always argue this based on historical textbooks that Pythagoras, of course, has a great place in history, but like Steve Jobs is for the information technology and modern computing, so is Pythagoras to mathematics. Pythagoras didn't invent mathematics. Pythagoras is a mathematics innovator. Why? Simply because the fact that Steve Jobs has leveraged the transistor and revolutionized the modern computing doesn't make Steve Jobs the inventor of the transistor. It doesn't make Steve Jobs Shockley, Bratton, and John Bardeen. In as much as Pythagoras showed the first proof of concept of mathematics, it doesn't make him the first to invent mathematics. After all, his theorem was already in use in Babylon a millennia before him. So I'm trying to visualize here, and I'm sharing this slide with you for you to look at it very carefully. When we talk about the greatest mind in science, those whose invention, discoveries, or proof of concept have shaped our humanity for the past 3 millennia, this is what it looks like. You have almost all of them here. Usually in the textbook, it starts with Pythagoras. Here I added Archimedes and I added Euclid. So it starts from Archimedes all the way through to Ron Eglash and Benoit Mandelbrot. But what is missing is my question mark. This question mark, where is the body of knowledge from Africa, from Babylonia, from China, from India, from the Islamic world, from the Native Americans? They are nowhere to be found. We know that the first ever that any mathematical artifact has been found was in Africa 35,000 BC. So why is this story not included in the Ark of Innovation? Actually, I named this the Ark of Innovation. So Africa from the get-go is missing in the Ark of Innovation. Now, not only the Limbo Bone was found in a cave in Swaziland. You know, this is where I came in with your popular vote. The Limbo Bone found in a cave in Swaziland has 29 notches on the bone. And some suggest, many actually suggest that the 29 notches may signal a lunar cycle. And Claudia Zaslavsky argued, and I agree, that the 29 notches signaling or suggesting the lunar cycle may refer to the cycle of a woman's menstruation. That's why I'm proposing that the first mathematician be named after this and called the Queen Lebombo. If you agree with me, we'll talk about that at the end. So that's the first time the oldest mathematical artifact, the second oldest mathematical artifact is the Shango bone, which is also covered in marks grouped in such a way that is suggestive of simple arithmetic. The person who discovered that is Jean de Heslen de Brocourt, who is a Belgian. And this Ishango bone is on exhibition at the Royal Museum in Belgium. So I'm trying to kind of put history into the right perspective here. I'm suggesting that without beautifying the Hellenistic history, without glorifying the African history of mathematics, I am inserting in the Ark of Innovation the Ishango bone, the Egypt pyramid, and then I'm putting our Queen Lebombo here, who was the first to come up with the 29 notches on the Lebombo bone. You've seen so to me, the arc of the scientific innovation is complete now. So some suggest that, you know, mathematics in Africa in ancient Africa was primitive. It was informal. It was unsophisticated. It was rudimentary. It was not that developed. And it's only in 600 BC when the Greek mathematician took over that mathematics was modernized and became sophisticated. Well, a few examples that prove them wrong. You all will recognize this. The oldest mathematical manuscript found in Timbuktu is an example that a primitive math could not generate this. The metallurgical techniques in the ancient Africa also is a proof of the application of scientific knowledge in Africa. The pyramids of Egypt. Look at this, for instance. You know, 22nd century before Pythagoras was born, 22 centuries before Pythagoras was born, his theorem was used to build the pyramid of Egypt. The first pyramid was built 22 centuries before he was born. You know that without trigonometry, there will be no pyramid in Egypt. So let's think about it. Think about the fact that a primitive mathematics, informal mathematics, rudimentary mathematics had generated these wonders in society. This is something that very few people know of. You all may have heard, or some of you may have heard of the great Benin kingdom in Nigeria. It was a powerful kingdom until it came into contact with the British colonizers, colonial powers, who destroyed this. But what I want to draw your attention to, we all talk about the Great Walls of China, but nobody refers to the Great Walls of the Kingdom of Benin, which is 4 times longer than the Great Wall of China in Nigeria. You see the architectural genius invested in this. This doesn't happen with primitive scientists. One of the things that Africa has mastered, especially in the Yoruba land, is the complex numeral systems. I don't want to dwell on that. The first astronomers were Africa. So these are all fields of math applications that I'm just sharing with you, rushing through it to try and do justice to the African origins of math, trying to suggest and postulate that math did not start with the Greek mathematician. Mathematical games and arts. You know, it's important to note here that the way mathematics was approached in Africa, in ancient and medieval Africa, is that mathematics was mainstream throughout human affairs. Pythagoras, 600 BC, came in and kind of disconnected sciences from society. You know, it is with Pythagoras' religious cult that sciences, and particularly mathematical sciences, was disconnected from society, as though it has nothing to do, math has nothing to offer the society. It became an abstract, objective, something wonderful that human beings should discover up there. Now, why are we saying this and why are we here? This is something we might tell our children and the kids in middle and high school. The economic benefit of mathematical sciences knowledge. You all know what led to the Silicon Valley Revolution after the 1947. You know that it's the invention of the transistor by John Bardeen, by Walt Shockley, and Brattain, the top 3. But it is not just the invention of the transistor that led to the information technology boom that we are still experiencing so far. It is also the African fractals. You know, Ron Eglash, Benoit Mandelbrot, and recently Jacques Attali in France said, if the world has been able to prosper and launch the information technology era with modern computing, with all the wonders we've developed, it is because one day there have been fractals in Africa, and Africans have discovered fractal, and that how do you say, digital technology fit itself with fractals. What I want to show you is the next slide. This is what the 3 industries are worth: the electronic industries and the information industry and the telecom industry. Annually, These three industries are worth 11 trillion billion. This is something I show to students in math. If you're doing math, this is the economic benefit of your knowledge. You might be a pioneer one day, like John Bardeen, and why not, an innovator like Steve Jobs. So, to my last section, why do we need to reinvent a new math culture? You know, there are two great thinkers, some of the greatest of their generation that I want to bring in here. It is David Hume, a famous Scottish philosopher who tried to revolutionize the doctrinaire thinking that has been in a place for 3,000 years since Pythagoras. He said, indulge your passion with science, but let your science be human and such as may have a direct reference to action in society. And Rabelais said in French, what you're reading there in English, science without conscience is the death of the soul. What do they mean? Math for the sake of math for the sake of something semi-divine out there to discover without consideration to context, without consideration to human affairs. It's something that will not help improve mathematics education. Let me take you on a safari ride for a minute to South Africa. When Nelson Mandela came into power in the early 1990s, after the demise of the apartheid regime, he was not expecting to face a huge crisis, a huge mathematics education crisis. Students failing in elementary, high school, middle school, universities, and very few students in South Africa enrolling in mathematics education. They tried to find what was happening. Of course, there are things related to pedagogy and all these things. There are colonial heritage, apartheid heritage, whereby Black people were not allowed in South Africa, and for that matter, in many countries in Africa during the colonial era, they were not allowed access to mathematics education. So there are two thinkers, Barnes and Venter, who came up with a pedagogy, with a theory that led to a series of reforms in the mathematics education in South Africa. These two authors suggest a shift of paradigm from the absolutist paradigm, which favors or fosters unchallengeable truth. Standards must be met. Students must take tests and succeed. And the quicker they succeed in tests, they're championed as the best in math. Hola, oh yeah. So they suggested a shift from the absolutist paradigm to social construct, from conventional math, heavy on ready-made systems, logic and procedures. No importance is given to context, to a mathematics as a tool operating within a social construct. Meaning what? It's important to reinvent the culture of mathematics education for the younger generation. Now back home, I read a book published recently by Jessica Norden. Some of you might have already grabbed one copy, but if you haven't, I would recommend that you read that book. Jessica Norden tried to investigate how a professor of math tried to change the culture of mathematics education in San Francisco State University. What she did, she centered her investigation around this professor who is called Federico Ardila Montilla. Federico grew up in Bogota and has been failing his high school, but he was gifted in mathematics. He was advised to apply to MIT. He got admitted to MIT. He went to MIT, but when we get there in mathematics, he faced what every single person faced. Being a Latino, he said he couldn't fit in the math community at MIT. He was an introvert, but at the same time, he felt alienated, isolated, and let alone the acid tongue language in the class by professors. He has a professor who used to give them assignment and insert into the assignment some problem that were never solved before. And in one instance, he did solve the problem. Federico went on to get his BSc, read his PhD, and later on, he realized that many of his students who went on to read PhD, they faced the same problem he faced at MIT, exclusion, macho culture, denigration of women in math, even though they're outperforming men, alienation. And he decided to do something about it. You all have heard these acid tongue phrases that kill before. I am sincerely hoping that no teacher in this room is still using this. A herd of cows, it's obvious, you brainless, bunch of retarded, it's easy clown. Can't you see that? You will never become a mathematician. Actually, Jessica Norder recounts a vivid example of one of the students of Professor Ardila at UC Berkeley, who went on to ask his professors for his signature on the forms to submit his major in math. The professor said to him, "You will never become a mathematician." And as the young student walked out of the door, the professor added to his pen saying, "And don't embarrass yourself, don't embarrass the department." These are phrases that should not be found in the new culture that we need to reinvent. Just one experiment that the Professor Ardila implemented. Professor Ardila, first of all, created a safe math environment. He get all his students in his classroom to commit to being patient, to being active, and to be generous in their own learning and in the learning of their classroom mates. He wants a math environment safe for both men and women, for people from ethnic minority groups to feel represented, to feel safe, to contribute, to interact. He changed completely the classroom practices. For instance, Professor Adilas will ask questions. At the beginning of semester, there's a couple of students or 3 students who raise their hands and are talking all the time. Once he realized how to fix this, when 2 or 3 hands were raised, he will ask them to go back to the fellows to discuss the answers with the classroom. He realized that the whole classroom will get engaged and the people will start talking. He assigned his student one day with a calculus assignment. He asked them to bring in from home cans, different tools. He wants them to identify the optimal shape of a can to maximize its volume and minimize the material used to make it. Some students brought in cans which reflected their cultural background, like cans of refried bean. Others brought in very fancy cans. When the students started exploring the problem and to find a solution, they discovered that larger cans and shorter cans are most efficient than cans that look thin and tall and larger. So the exercise and the discovery prompted spirited discussion in the classroom. Spirited discussion, they discuss about food, cultural background. Those who never talk in class start talking. In a calculus session, they brought in everybody to interact with no fear, with no reservation, with no shyness. There's a second test. This one is a study which favors how to go about differences, how acknowledging differences help boost student achievement. There's a US study of 700 college students where group of students were assigned to 2 different teaching philosophy. One that is colorblind, in which they took an online math or physics or chemistry course and were asked, there's an online voice audio message welcoming the students. You will take this course, this exercise, but keep in mind that you all are similar, because if you all are similar, and because of these similarities, you will perform, you will collaborate, and you will show productivity. It will be more productive to think about the fact that every one of you is similar to, there's a similarity, no differences, colorblind teaching philosophy. The second group is presented with multicultural teaching philosophy. Keep in mind that you guys are different, that you come from different backgrounds, and that because of those differences, we believe your input into solving this problem will be more productive and richer than the first one. Students found that, particularly students from minority ethnic group, Blacks, South Asian, Native Americans, Latino, East Asian, they found that they performed better in the teaching philosophy that acknowledges the differences than in the first colorblind teaching philosophy. But the study did show, though, that white students found the second one, the multicultural teaching philosophy announcement syllabus more biased. So the astonishing result presented by Jessica Nordell in his book is revealing. Professor Ardilas, 20 of the 200 students took part into his program since its founding. 50 of them have gone to get their doctorate degree. And of the 21 in the US, 20 got their degrees, and 14 of them have gotten the have become professors. Let alone the fact that they all feel encouraged and able to stay motivated throughout the curriculum. The result, the solution he applied in devising his new mathematics culture: better student achievement, respect, collaboration, support, participation, inclusion, conducive environment. So my question is, what are the elements or variable of the new mathematics culture that we can draw from this example here? I've gathered four of them very quickly, subject to your discussion. Awareness: history of mathematics science matters for the kids, for the children, for the student. And then the doctrine change. Remember Hume and Rabelais. Learning environment: create a conducive learning environment is extremely important if we want to make students safer to learn. Enabling pedagogy is also very important. I'd like to ask you to help solve one problem. As we are with math teachers and professors, if you can come up with an equation of high performance class or country in mathematics, using identifying many variables or elements of the new culture, that will be very helpful. And please share this with me or share this with Elsa. Two questions for you, for me to finish. What kind of mathematics culture have you developed in your own class? I'll be happy to learn that as we move into the Q&A session. And how did you implement that mathematics culture? So on that, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Thierry. This was really wonderful, and I see so many comments around how important and interesting this is. We unfortunately don't have more time for questions, but many of the authors you mentioned are featured on our resource list, so I encourage everybody to check it out. And I would like to thank you again so much for your generosity in sharing this wide-ranging and crucial perspective to bring to our classrooms. So thank you again so much.
Thank you, Elsa, and I want to thank you all and for the participation. I take it that I got my popular vote for Queen Lebombo, huh?
Yes, I am a voter for Queen Lebombo. Women as the founders of math, and
actually, Claudia Zaslavsky suggested that the Lebombo 29 notches, which suggests to lunar cycles, suggests that a woman was monitoring her menstruation cycle.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can view that artifact, Limbo Bone and the Shango Bone, on our resource list as well, if you want to learn more about that. So thank you very much. We are now to go along with the theme of how we story math in context and how we ground ourselves in the various techniques that are developed in various places. We're going to follow with our story number 2. Following Onesimus inoculation, we now have a very simple, short mathematical game from Mauritius.
We will see a presentation by Yara on some creative ways on counting multiplication that she draws from Mauritius. Using fingers to count is very prevalent across African contexts, and Yara is a 10-year-old student in 5th grade in Boston Public Schools.
Hello everyone, my name is Yara. I'm 10 years old. I live in Boston and go to Boston Public Schools. Today, I'm going to teach you one way to teach multiplication, using my fingers. It's a little trick that people in Mauritius use. Mauritius is my mom's country and it's off the coast of Madagascar. This is a trick to teach multiplication with the numbers 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, using your fingers. Here's how you do it. Here's one example, 7 times 7. So make a fist. These fists are your 5s. Then put a finger up for 6, 7. And you do the same on the other hand, 6, 7. Then these are your 10s. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 40. And you multiply the rest of the remaining fingers. 3 times 3 equals 9. And 9 plus 40 equals 49. Let's do another one. This time, try it with me. Let's do 8 times 9. Make a fist. 6, 7, 8. Fist. 6, 7, 8, 9. So, you have 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10, that's 7 tens, so 70. And 2 times 1 equals 2, so 2 plus 70 equals 72. See how it works? Let's do one more. 7 times 6. 6. Make a fist, 6. Do the same on the other hand, 6, 7. 30. 4 times 3 equals 12. 12 plus 30 equals 42. Thank you very much, and I hope you can use this method with your students. Bye!